This conference will now be recorded.
So good evening, everybody. Labor Day, Labor Evening, whatever you want to call it. I think September the 5th, 6th, 5th, 5th. And it's the AnCan high-risk recurrent advanced group. We're about to get started. There was something on my mind that I was going to say, but since I've forgotten it, it couldn't have been that important. So we're going to dive right in. And we're going to start with George, who I think, George, I should know this because I wrote it down. Where is it that you live? I want to say Rhode Island, but am I right?
Andover, Massachusetts.
Andover, Mass. Okay. And why? I'm going to ask you a few questions, even though I know the answers to a lot of these questions already. But I'm going to ask you the questions so that everybody else can learn. And then what we want to do as quickly as we can is get to the question that you want to ask us, which is how do you proceed with treatment? So how old are you, George?
I'm 80 years old.
Okay, God bless you. And you're in Andover, Mass. And tell everybody the year you were first diagnosed, and listen up carefully, guys.
I was diagnosed 23 years ago, at which time I had brachytherapy with the famous Dr. D'Amico.
Okay, hold on. Let me ask you the questions and we'll get to that, okay? So that, by my reckoning, is 1999. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what was your Gleason score and your PSA level when you were diagnosed?
It was, my PSA was 5 and my Gleason score was 6.
3 plus 3, right?
Yes.
And guys, that's interesting because we've seen this before, that back in the day, those Gleason scores were not as reliable as they are today. Because we now know that it's exceptionally rare that a 3 plus 3 metastasizes. And so the likelihood is that that 3 plus 3 wasn't read accurately. It didn't go to Dr. Epstein, I'm guessing, or others. And, you know, I think when I hear that, of course, I think of our dear departed Jerry Deans, who was also diagnosed in 99, I think, or 98, with a 3 plus 3, but it was never a 3 plus 3. So just saying. And you saw back at that time, you saw Dr. D'Amico at, was he at Dana-Farber at the time?
Yes.
Okay. Did you also see a urologist? Well, you must have. You probably saw a urologist who sent you to Dr. D'Amico, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Well, we don't need to get into who that was in 1999. Now, and I think most people on this call who know who Dr. D'Amico is, but if they don't, he's a very well-held, highly reputable radiation oncologist. He's, along with Mac Roach, he's kind of the dean of radiation oncologists in this country. I think that would be a fair way to describe him. And did they see anything unusual before they started your treatment? Did they notice anything from any scans or anything like that?
No, they did not, Rick.
Okay. And so you chose to start with brachy, is that right, George?
That's correct.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about what happened, what happened after you had the brachy and how long you went for.
After I had the brachy, the PSA didn't come down to the level Dr. D'Amico suggested it might, in 2 or less than 2. It really hovered around 3. And when I would see him for the years that followed, he would always tell me, don't worry about it because you have a very large prostate, and that probably explains it.
How large is large? Did he ever tell you?
No, but I know it's 86 cc's. Am I saying it right?
Yep. Yeah, 86 cc's is a good size. It pales by comparison to the 150, which is the record, the record I know of. I do know of one gent who had a prostate of 150 cc's, but 86 cc's is probably twice the normal size. Now, how long did you go for? And to tell us a little bit about, bring us up to date, bring the guys up to date at this point.
So I went for 20 plus years, and it would be my urologists, different ones would just say, your PSA is a little bit high, but we don't see any problems. And it wasn't until May of 21 when I had a hip operation, and it was a bit of a difficult operation. And my PSA just after the operation increased to 15, and then the doctors thought it had something to do with the operation, and we waited 3 or 4 weeks. We had another PSA, and it went from 15 to 45.
And that was just, I mean, how had you gotten to 15? Had it just gradually crept up and crept up and crept up?
No, it was just before the hip operation. It had crept up to maybe just below 5, 4.75. And then after the hip operation, it jumped to 15.
I see. Okay. And did they do any scans to see what was going on?
No, not then. But when I started with the MGH, Dr. Lee, I've had every imaginable scan since then.
Okay. So, so you're now seeing Dr. Richard Lee at Massachusetts General, and who is a GU medical oncologist, guys. And what did he prescribe for you?
He immediately put me on Lupron last September, and it worked I didn't know much about it. It worked very quickly. The PSA came down in 3 months from 45 to below 5, and then the following 3 months it came down to 0.0448.
Okay. And when they did these scans, could they see where they did the scans before you went on the LHRH, I'm sure, could they see the source of the metastasis?
Well, that's probably a big mistake that somebody made. I didn't understand what was going on. No, they didn't do any scans until unfortunately, until I had my first Lupron shot.
Until after the Lupron shot?
That's right, Rick.
Oh, yeah, that does sort of surprise me why they didn't do some. I mean, back in December, they didn't do a year ago. They could have been doing a PSMA test to see where the heck this was coming from. I mean, what does Dr. Lee say about that?
I actually, he's never commented upon it.
I'm sure. So now, somehow or other, you went back to Dr. D'Amico as well, and tell the guys what your alternatives are. We should add one more piece of information that George's PSA has risen fractionally in a year. It's gone from 0.048, I think, to 0.054. Is that right, George?
That's correct.
So, you know, the LHRH seems to be doing a good job. How are you tolerating the LHRH?
Surprisingly good. Initially had a lot of hot flashes, but then Dr. Lee recommended this supplement, Cohash, I believe it's called, and it's worked wonderfully. I don't have any hot flashes anymore. I continue my exercise. I exercise a lot. I'm sleeping well. I'm living what I would say is a normal life for an 80-year-old.
Since we have him on the call, Richard Wassersug, would you like to comment on black cohosh?
Oh, wow, there's a lot here I'd like to comment on. I would have had the PSMA scans before I started Lupron, as I think Rick was suggesting here. The evidence for support of black cohosh is limited, but if it's working, then stay with it, I guess. It's not endorsed by it's not endorsed by actual clinical trials that support it in a strong way. But since it's working, you can stay with it. I mean, there are a whole slew of other options for the hot flashes. Given your age, it's not uncommon that the younger a person is, the more bothered they are by ADT, that is, drugs like Lupron. The older they are, our testosterone naturally declines with age, and typically older age have less bother. So what you report of not having a lot of bother from the ADT is consistent with your age. I do have two other questions, although I don't know if Rick, I can ask them. You haven't said anything about comorbidities or family history. So if you've had three brothers that have all died of prostate cancer, they may be inclined not to be aggressive.
Right.
So, and the other part of it is if you have a lot of comorbidities. So Rick, is it all right if I ask about that?
Well, I was going to get to it, but yes, by all means, ask now. The comorbidities, meaning how are you tolerating, and what other side effects do you have?
Do you have a serious risk of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, things like that?
I'm not sure I understand the question, Richard.
So, family history means brothers, uncles, father die of prostate cancer or anything like that?
I have a younger brother who has had prostate cancer. He had his prostate removed, and he had a recurrence. He had radiation, and he's fine now.
Okay. And what I meant by comorbidities, other common diseases that can be limiting in one's quality of life and health and longevity. And typically these would be heart disease, diabetes, neurodegenerative diseases, and such.
No.
No? Well, I'm not going to suggest treatment, but if the black cohosh, to get back to the question, if black cohosh is working, you might as well stay with it.
Good.
And what about genetic history, George? Do you have any? Have you been germline tested, or have they done any type of genetic testing on you?
Nobody's ever suggested it, Rick.
Okay. Well, again, something for you to bring up. Definitely with at least genetic testing, and you can get that done for free through the PROMISE trial. I am certain that Jeff Marchi will put that link in the chat window. If you're new, by the way, the chat window is the little bubble in the top right-hand corner. There's a little bubble, and if you click on that, there are messages going back and forth in there. And Jeff will be good enough to put the correct link in there. And if you click on that link, you can apply for a test to see if you've inherited anything. Do you know if either of your parents had cancer?
My father died from a variety of things, and he's died 40 years ago, and it was never clear just what he had. He had a series of problems. My mother he had Parkinson's disease. My mother lived 89, and she had diabetes. No, she had kidney disease.
Kidney disease. Oh, I can hear a helper in the background there, George. Now, just in case
Why-
some of you don't know, Dr. Wassersug, Professor Wassersug, as I like to call him, is a guru on androgen deprivation therapy. Here's his, I don't know if you can see this, how well you can see it, but his book is Androgen Deprivation Therapy. It's readily available. It is a great Bible on how to deal with problems if you are on androgen deprivation therapy. And many of us have used this book, and we are Richard is on our advisory board, and we're very, very grateful that from time to time he attends this meeting. He is an
Rick,
American who has lived in Vancouver, Canada for many, many years.
let me just say, you showed the first edition. There's a second edition that came out about 5 years ago. There's a European edition that came out last year. We're pushing to put a new edition of a third edition. If one wants really the most up-to-date version, it's a European edition, but they're charging a fortune for it because the publisher's difficult. But I also do make my email address available. I have not, if someone, I'm not hidden. And if people have questions specifically about managing the ADT side effects, that's typically our focus on our research. And I'm not an MD. I'm a PhD research scientist. But anyway, thank you, Rick, for the pitch.
Yeah, so that's the only copy that I have, unfortunately, Richard. So that's what I got to use. So now comes the interesting part for George. George, if I'm not mistaken, Dr. Lee has said to you, let's just leave it as it is. And although you could get radiation therapy if you wanted to get radiation therapy, and Dr. D'Amico, who you still keep in touch with, has said, we've got some experimental type of radiation. I don't know what it is. You didn't say. Maybe you should try that. But it isn't covered by insurance. It's not in a clinical trial. And you're wondering, and you'd like to hear from these guys, what would they do? Would they stick or would they twist with the radiation therapy? Is that a fair summary?
Yes, it is. Can I quickly tell you what Dr. D'Amico suggests?
Yes.
He suggests that I get a fusion biopsy, which is actually scheduled very soon. And he expects that they're going to find in the portion of my prostate that was not seeded, they will find cancer. And if there is cancer there, he wants me to consider Dr. Cole at the Dana-Farber, who will go in and ablate, I believe is the term, the cancer that might exist in that small part of my prostate that wasn't seeded. If there's no cancer there, he still wants me to undergo 5 weeks of radiation, because the one thing after my first scan, which was after the first Lupron shot, that was noticed was 2 swollen lymph nodes in my pelvis that had completely got to normal after the first shot. And I just want to quickly add that after my hip operation, I had the craziest blood work for 3 or 4 months. My PCP was very concerned that my blood was going every which way, and it's all got better now. If that's relevant, I don't believe it is.
So either he wants you to consider some focal ablation to the prostate, or 5 weeks of radiation. Would that be to the pelvic girdle or to the pelvic bed or to where?
The lymph nodes. Excuse my ignorance, but that's what I understand.
Okay. Okay, guys. Now, I'm very curious what you think about this. Unfortunately, we don't have Dr. Jack on the phone today, because he might have some solid input on that, since he's basically faced with exactly the same problem, and he's a year or so older than George. Maybe I should connect George to Dr. Jack. But let me throw this open. given the where the hormone therapy is, if it were you, what would you be doing? Who wants to go first?
I'll opine here, Rick. George, how have you been tolerating the Lupron?
Very well.
Very well. So the least invasive thing to do would just be to continue taking the Lupron as long as you're tolerating it well. And at 80 years old, you know, no doubt you'll live long enough that you won't be dying of prostate cancer. It'll probably be well controlled by the Lupron alone, given your Gleason 6 or whatever. We don't really know what it is now, but I mean, you've already gone 23, 24 years. On the other hand, you know, if you had told me you weren't tolerating Lupron very well, then, and they've seen lymph nodes light up, then radiation to the whole pelvic region makes sense. That might take care of it once and for all. Yeah, so I guess I don't understand why he's recommending some sort of experimental radiation that, you know, or the conventional radiation to the pelvic region. I don't see why that wouldn't be appropriate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think, Len, I think that it's the ablation, the focal ablation that is the experimental part that isn't covered. Is that right, George?
That's right. It's not covered by anything. It's, I think, could be as much as $20,000.
Right.
Oh.
So you know, I would say, why do focal ablation if they want to radiate the prostate? Let them radiate the prostate, or let them do it with, you know, with SBRT.
So they can't. I'm sorry, you know this. They can't radiate the prostate because it's got the seeds.
Well, the type of I don't know what they're using. But if they were if they're not using radiation, if they're using some sort of focal laser, I thought that focal laser was covered. Cryo's covered. I mean, there are focal treatments that are covered. So I don't know what sort of focal treatment they want to use.
My knowledge, which is limited, I talked to Medicare. If it was the first time of discovering the prostate cancer, the focal therapy would be fine. But since it's been seeded, Medicare says they wouldn't cover it.
Anybody have any knowledge about focal therapy for salvage?
That's the question, right?
By focal therapy, Rick and George, you mean something like finding a bad lymph node by a PSMA scan and then using SVT to shoot at it? Is that what you mean?
In the gland, inside.
Oh, inside the prostate. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And they can't. Well, SVT is pretty darn accurate. You'd think you could miss those beads, wouldn't you?
That's what I was thinking. And Julian, you originally had focal, and then they came back and you had regular radiation to your prostate when they did it the second time. Isn't that right?
That's correct. Yeah, I had focal laser ablation that they pretty much went in and zapped some spots, but unfortunately they didn't get it all. So
get it all.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've got to believe that there's some treatment that is regular type of treatment that's covered for treating the prostate after you've had brachy. And if nothing else, I'm sure cryo would work. And that's what I would be drilling down on with Dr. D'Amico. I mean, there must be some other alternatives that are covered by Medicare.
The cryo, I think, if you haven't spoken to Medicare, which is an adventure, as you might imagine, the cryo falls into the same category as the ablation.
Well, I would be enlisting, I'd be enlisting Dr. D'Amico's help on this. Because I mean, we know that we know you can treat the gland a second time. We've got guys here on the call who have had the gland treated a second time.
What I'm thinking of doing, Rick and gentlemen, is I'm thinking of getting a second opinion from a radiologist at the Mass General, because I get the feeling in talking to Dr. D'Amico when I went to see him, this is something that he and his team really are trying to build a practice in this ablation. I just had that feeling.
Yeah.
It left me uncomfortable, and even this fusion biopsy, which is scheduled, worries me a little bit because, as some of you may know, having had a recent hip surgery, there's a possibility I could get an infection in my hip, which scares the hell out of me.
You know, I think that if it were me, I might go further afield and I might go and see somebody like Zielinski at Memorial Sloan Kettering for a second opinion. Because I think that you've got to go to somebody that's really experienced, a radiation oncologist who's super experienced in treating the gland, both primarily and secondarily. And I'd be looking at somebody like Mac Roach or Zielinski. I don't know if anybody else has any other names they would want to throw in the hat for a super experienced radiation oncologist. Any other thoughts?
Rick, I have my hand up. I have a couple of things.
Yes.
I actually, I don't know D'Amico personally. I've heard him lecture. When the story is being laid out to us, the important point was doing a fusion biopsy. That is, we need to know what the target is. There could be two small lymph nodes in the prostate bed that are a target. There could be a massive tumor somewhere in the gland. And to not know what the target is the first question before you ask,
Right.
you worry about how you're going to target it. So you asked if anybody knows anybody who's had a focal therapy followed by a salvage ablative therapy. And a guy I exercise with regularly had a thermoablation done in Germany, not a procedure done normally in North America, followed by Tulsa in Toronto. He had massive problems with urethral obstruction and catheters having to be put in and such. And I think what D'Amico is saying is, let's find out exactly where the best targets are, what the best targets are. We may not be able to hit them all, but but whether it's with SBRT, it's a little late now because you're on Lupron to go and do PSMA scans to see, or look for bone mets or whatever, because your PSA is so low that you're not likely to find them. But if there's a large tumor within the gland, then that would be worth knowing. I'd be curious when you talked to Rick about whether the slides were really accurately read. Back then, how many cores did they take? I mean, now they might take 12 to 20 cores. If they took only 6 cores, there is a very good chance they missed it in the first place. Your PSA is very low. There's no reason to panic, in my view. And one other thing, I guess I'd ask the personal thing, is I can beat your history. I mean, I was diagnosed 24 years ago with a baseline PSA of 19, a Gleason of 7. I had a prostatectomy. I had salvage radiotherapy, and I've been on LH, RH, or other ADT drugs for almost continuously for over 20 years. So I would guess I'd ask, how old was your dad when he died?
He was a young man, and
you said 40 years old, right? So I mean, I think they're looking at if they can give you this goes along sort of what Lynn's saying. I mean, if nothing else, if you're anxious about by both diagnostics and treatment for whatever reason, the right now, even though it is not completely holding, your PSA is remarkably low, and you have years to explore things, or at least months. Nothing to panic about. And I'm giving a slightly different position, Rick, than you're saying, but I don't think you necessarily need to shop around until you've got some more imaging done and we know what the target is. And I'll stop there.
No, I mean, I think that I was really more commenting in response to what George is doing. I think if it was me, what I would do is no radiation right now. I might even be so bold after a year as to go off the LHRH and let my PSA rise until it gets to somewhere around 0.65, and then do a PSMA and find out where the heck the disease is and proceed from there. I mean, that's frankly what I would be tempted to do. It doesn't hurt to do intermittent. We've got loads of men who have gone off. You watch it carefully, let the PSA rise, and when it gets to that level of around 0.65 or higher, do a PSMA scan and find out exactly where everything is. I think I'd rather do that than even going through a fusion biopsy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's.
I hope I made clear. I've had the PSMA and I've had multiple MRI biopsies at Dana and as well as the MGH, and they still have found no cancer.
Yeah, but what was your PSA when you had the PSMA scan?
When I had the PSMA, most recently, it was very low. I see what you mean. It was.
So why do they do it? You know, they're wasting their time and your time and Medicare's time. They know they're not going to get a result.
Rick, this is new to me.
You know, then we know that you rarely see anything under 0.2. You may see something between 0.2 and 0.5. And really, to get a result, your PSA has to be around 0.65, 0.65. And anybody that's doing, if anybody's doing PSMA scans at 0.048, why are they doing it other than to earn money? I mean, it's just, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
So am I, the gist of this, if I would decide to stay on just Lupron with Dr. Lee for the next year, am I losing any ground in dealing with this?
Well, like I say, if it were me, I'd go off the Lupron. I'd let my PSA rise and find out exactly where the disease is. But especially since it seems like the disease is well under control. If you stayed on the Lupron, I can't tell you if you're losing ground or not. But I think, as Len said, and as Richard said, it'd be very comfortable. But we really have to move on at this point. Is there anything else that anybody wants to say before we go to Tony?
Please accept my thanks to all of you so sincerely.
It's a pleasure. So again, you got a few options we've thrown on the table there that you haven't considered before, George.
Thank you.
And I will try, I'm going to make a note, and I'm going to connect you to Jack Baruch, who isn't on the call today, because he's sort of going through a very similar process. In fact, I've got two guys, Jack Baruch and Steve Brown, both of whom are in somewhat similar situations to you.
Thank
you. Roughly in the same age bracket. Steve's a little younger, Jack's a little older. Jack was treated first in 2003 and Steve in 2008. So maybe I'll connect them to you, and both of them are knowledgeable, and see what they say. So, and you'll be able to listen to this again on the recording, George. We post a recording.
One thing to clarify, you would stop Lupron, get tests every month till your PSA rises to that point, and then you'd immediately go back on Lupron once you have the test. I don't think that was mentioned.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Right. Now,
thank you.
Can we hear Tony Fig?
Am I coming through now?
Yes, you are, loud and clear.
I think what the
Yay.
problem was is I had some earbuds with a microphone and that wasn't working, so I got rid of those.
Okay, now I am going to, you and I have talked, but Ben is navigating you. So I'm going to allow Ben to assume the chair to talk to you and to introduce you and to ask the questions and to bring out what he feels should be brought out so that we can get through this probably quicker. Ben, do you mind doing that?
I don't have my question sheet with me. I was expecting to do that.
You never know, you see, you don't know where it's gonna go.
Hey, I'll try it, Rick. It'll give me practice.
Well, the only reason I said you can do it with pleasure, but I said Ben because Ben's been navigating Tony.
Oh, already knows him. Okay.
That's why I was asking Tony to do it. But I'll tell you what, I'll ask the questions and I'll let Ben guide me. And let me just pull up your background. So Tony reached out to us about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think, and there was some similarity to Ben. So Ben has very kindly been working directly with Tony. Okay, Tony. So you wrote to me and you wanted me to connect you to the people at Foundation Medicine. And I was sort of reluctant to do it because I thought that was going down a rabbit hole. So tell everybody how old you are.
I'm 76. I was diagnosed with Gleason 6 in 2018 in 2 quadrants. And then I was on active surveillance until earlier this year. I had another PSA done, and that came back at 5.2. And on a digital exam, they noticed a couple of more nodules. So a short time after that, I had another PSA done, and it was 9.45, and they did a biopsy, and it came back Gleason 8 in all 4 quadrants. So I talked to the urology oncologist, and he did a bone scan and a CAT scan, and it showed that everything was contained. So I had a radical prostatectomy on July 8th of this year. And since that time, I had a DNA test through Promise, and that came through showing that I had a CHEK2 mutation. And I also had one doctor do a decipher that came back at 1.0. Another one did a Prolaris, and that came back at 1.0. And post-surgery, I had PSA done for the first time at 7 weeks, and it was at 0.39, which was kind of alarming to me. Prior to that, also, I had another lab do some testing, and I've had 8 positive cancer biomarkers right along, and they haven't changed. So I talked with Rick, and he suggested that I discuss things with Ben. And I also had an appointment with a hematology oncologist at Strong Hospital in Rochester, and met with him last week. And
Let me stop. Let me just stop you there. There's a few bits and pieces we need to add here. One is that your post pathology showed that you had intraductal and cribriform disease and that you were actually 4+5.
yes,
And that's, I think, a very important factor. And your the chief urologist at the University of Rochester said, come back in 3 months and we'll test you. And we
Correct.
said, that's rubbish. Get in there now, because it's highly likely that they didn't get all this disease. So you went back and you got tested, and sure enough, you were already at 0.39. And so we said, get your ass over to a GU medical oncologist. I think you guys have heard us say that before. And we suggested Van Veldhuizen, who was in the same practice, because we've heard some good things about him in the past, and we have a bunch of guys that have used him. And so that was who you just went to see. And tell us what Dr. Van Veldhuizen said to you.
He did not want to do anything until we did a PSMA PET scan, and I have that scheduled for October 12th. And at that point, he said that we'll talk with my original radiology oncologist, works in that same office as he does. And depending on what the PMA SA is, that they'll do radiation, but he's going to hold off doing anything for hormone therapy to see how that works.
Okay, now when was that 0.39 done?
2 weeks ago at just about 7 weeks post-surgery.
And when are you planning on getting your next PSA test?
He wants me to get another test on the week of the 29th of September. And
Okay.
that'll be before the PET scan. And also I'll be meeting with him 3 days after the PET scan.
So the one thing I think we would say to you that you've heard before, if that your PSA is less than 0.5, it's not a great idea to get a PET scan, and really you want it to be at least at 0.65. And if you have to defer that PSMA scan, most of us would do it because we would want to be sure of getting a result.
That was new information for me this evening when I heard you mention that earlier. And so I may discuss that with Dr. Van V and see if he wants to delay that.
Yeah, well, that was what came out of the Condor trial, which, and the Osprey and the Condor trials were two of these trials, and there are other trials that have been done. And I think the general consensus is that if you want to get a result from one of these PSMA scans, that's probably the best one. That's probably a smart move. And in terms of which scan to use, if it was me, I'd be asking for the Illuccix scan, the Telix scan.
What is that called again?
For that, Illuccix, ILLUCIX. And the reason for that is because I can get that scan overread by Telix. Most of these docs, even in Rochester, they don't have the experience reading these scans yet. They haven't seen enough. And so Telix will reread the scan. And you can ask for that scan to be reread.
All right.
With a more experienced eye. Now, it's possible Dr. Van V won't be aware of that, but I can assure you that's the case. He can check with Telix. And that's one of the reasons why, I mean, there's really no difference between the Telix and the Locamet scan. It's exactly the same. It's just packaged differently. The Pylarify scan is slightly different. But I think even up, I would ask for an Illuccix scan rather than a Pylarify, knowing that I could get it reread.
All right.
And I like the advice personally. I like the advice that Dr. Van V is doing. It's kind of what we were just saying to George Fantini, that you got to wait and try and find out where the heck that cancer is, and then you decide how you're going to treat the cancer.
Rick, I don't know. I mean, I come irregularly to these meetings 3 or 4 times a year, and I don't know to the extent that you want to inspire discussion. But I think there's a slight difference between the 2 cases that we've just discussed, in that we went from active surveillance to a post-op Gleason of 9, and that's a big jump. And in that sense, the Gleasons of 9 will metastasize. That they're going to metastasize. We know that. And in that sense, the other thing I would want to know from Mr. Figs is to what extent did they discuss to you what that CHEK2 mutation means? That's one of the rarer ones that one picks up after you get the BRCA1, 2s and ATM, but it's real, and it's one of those that may be aggressive. I do not know whether it's sensitive to the PARB inhibitors, etc. But I personally, I'm giving it just to make a discussion here and cut me off if this is inappropriate, but I would be sort of reluctant not to go to ask, should I be going for a more aggressive systemic treatment?
Well, I think that the first thing you've got to do is see where the disease is, and then I think all of those points that you make, Richard, are good points. CHEK2 is CHEK2's a little difficult because whilst it's in the BRCA pathway, we don't have any evidence that a PARP inhibitor is effective on CHEK2.
That's right. And it's ironic because I said, yes, we want to know what the targets are, but it makes a difference if your Gleason's a 7 or if your Gleason's 9.
Well,
and a PSA is climbing at the doubling rate that we saw before he went on.
Well, there are some other factors in here too that we've sort of skipped over, but for the longest time after Tony was diagnosed, he chose I wouldn't call it complementary, I would call it an alternative treatment. And I don't really want to get into that alternative treatment, and we've convinced Tony that to leave that alternative treatment behind. So the time between the 3+3 and the 4+5 was occupied with alternative therapies out of Germany. And I don't think it's beneficial for us to be talking about it given the result. But I do think that the 4+5, as Richard rightly points out, is a significant is significant. I think the cribriform and the intraductal are very significant. That's why Ben and I immediately said, don't be waiting 3 months for your first PSA. And I think that we got you tracking. Now, you'll come back when Dr. Van Vee after your PSMA, and we'll help you figure out the right questions to ask Dr. Van Vee about your treatment, the treatment path. It's almost certain that there's going to be some systemic therapy involved here.
Yeah, the cribriform and the intraductal are not positive. I'm sorry, Tony, they're not good signs. They do suggest, plus the Gleason 9, that aggressive treatment will be in order. Some aggressive treatment.
Ben,
on the pathology report, they had taken out 31 lymph nodes and they were all negative, and the margins were all clear, so it seemed to be pretty much contained.
You know, it's an issue around this micrometastasis that we just don't see, especially when we know that you've got all these signs. Ben, you've dealt with a very, very similar diagnosis and Gleason score and pathology, right?
So I had ductal rather than intraductal, but similarly, the surgery looked clean, the pathology looked clean. It was a T2. There was no extracapular extension, clean margins. He took out the lymph nodes, but they were not involved, and nonetheless, it had metastasized. So that's not necessarily you're all clear. If you have a high Gleason score, those kinds of things are not as meaningful. As far as a precise number, PSA number at which to get a PSMA scan, I got mine at 0.56, and the doctor argued that when your PSA is moving up, it doesn't have to be quite as high a figure, and I expect that Tony's will have moved up by the
Right.
time his PET scan is ready.
Right. Anybody else want to come in and talk to Tony?
And I guess I would just add to what everybody said here, is that my approach would be, or to find out where it is first. You can't, and then you can make a decision as the best way to treat it. But you don't want to just shoot in the dark.
It was really a godsend that I was able to initially make contact with Rick, because I was researching all sorts of things on the internet, trying to find some answers, and finally found this group, and it's really headed me in a good direction. So I feel very much at ease now and very happy to have come across the group. So I thank you all for your information and dedication.
Don't trust Dr. Google.
Yeah.
And don't trust Rick, whatever you do. But I do think Van Velthuizen is on the right track. I absolutely agree with Richard that systemic treatment is in your future. What type of systemic treatment, we'll see. But you'll keep coming back. You know, we're gonna navigate you the right way, and you know we're going to give you the right questions to ask Dr. Van Vee. And I do agree with Ben that whilst we say 0.65, when your PSA is moving up like that, and it's a little less, it's fine. But I personally would be reluctant to do it under 0.5. My gut, I'm not a doc, my gut is that you'll probably be at the right level. When you test again, you'll tell us at the end of the month.
Is it normal procedure to do hormone therapy along with radiation, or Dr. V said we may not need to do that, depending upon what the PET scan is and what the radiation treatment would be?
Who wants to take a shot at that one before I shoot my mouth off? Go ahead, Richard.
So there's a lot of papers that are coming out on this with a high risk disease, and you've got that. The ADT plus radiation is a working and good combination. With low risk disease, there's no advantage of adding in the ADT given the side effects and the difficulties with quality of life that ADT brings. But you're already in the high risk disease area. So ADT, if they recommend ADT, then you probably should follow their recommendation. That's my view.
And my comment is radiate what? What is it they want to radiate?
I mean, I think you know, if you follow the MacRoach model, they'd be radiating the pelvic girdle and the lymph nodes on the basis of micrometastasis. Cribriform, intraductal, 4+5 disease, 0.39 immediately after surgery. If it were me, that's what I would get radiated, because I think that's the best way to get some sort of durable remission here.
Thank you.
No, I would not like Dr. Wassersug. I would not be timid in addressing this. I think you got to go in hard and hit it hard, and then hopefully you'll nail it. Especially if we don't see any significant metastasis from the PSMA scan, but that would be my approach. Anyway, anybody else? Len, Peter, anybody else want to say anything?
We have some idea what's going on, because he did have the CAT scan.
Yeah, yes, a CAT scan and a bone scan.
And that was, what was that?
If you've already
Nothing.
had 31 lymph nodes removed and they were negative, the chances are that you've got something systemic going on. It could be any place in your body.
Yeah.
So you want a full body PSMA scan and to find out where the target is, because it can be any place. Like in my situation, it's no longer in my pelvic girdle or anything like that. It's in odd places it's showing up. So you've got to have a pretty good scan.
Okay, guys, let's move along and try and get through everybody as quickly as we can. We got a lot of updates here. So Frank, we'll start with Frank Fabish. Frank, bring us up to date, please.
Okay, I got back from Mexico, all good. Didn't bring anything back with me, so that was good news. A couple days later, had my 6-week checkup with my GU oncologist. Positive results. PSA still undetectable. Testosterone 13. Rest of the blood draw was within limits and not a problem. So all good results. And the other good news was that I don't have my next checkup for another 3 months. So it shows that the doc is confident with the treatment and the results, as well as my wife and I are. The last item I did get a couple months ago, a bone density scan, and I now have to get a dental checkup with the VA because my doc is recommending Prolia treatment because of the results of the bone density.
Which were what was your bone density?
Oh, I don't have that number in front of me right now, but he did. But he did recommend after it that I go on Prolia.
Okay. Okay.
But I'll
right.
get that number and I'll email it to you.
Yeah, let me know and then let us know what happens in the bone density test, because as long as Dr. Bob is on here, we got to retire. We now have our own resident retired dental consultant on the call as well. So
Yeah, I have my VA checkup set for Friday of this week to go through the X-rays and the exam, and then sign off on the form before my doc will proceed.
Okay. Questions, anybody? Okay.
Very, very quickly, did the words either osteopenia or osteoporosis get mentioned?
Osteopenia.
Okay. So, are you doing any impact loading exercises? Do you jog, play tennis, do anything that loads your skeleton?
No, just some walking.
So you may want to, if you're otherwise healthy enough to do it, you might want to add something that puts a little more loading on your skeleton. Pickleball, light jogging, anything that can load your skeleton might be helpful. And there are data to back that, mostly out of Perth, Australia, but nevertheless, there is data to support that.
Great suggestion.
I appreciate that.
Great suggestion. I mean, I improved my bone density from being osteoporotic to not even being osteopenic, using a combination of bone strengtheners and exercise over 2 years. So it definitely works.
But That's my update, and it was good results.
Good, good, good. Okay. Jim Jeffries, we asked before and you didn't answer. Is there anything you'd like to speak to us about tonight? We did. I think you froze. Try again.
Oh, your mic's not working.
Yeah, your mic's not working.
He says
Well,
it's
just
okay.
That
he
me you're
said he'd
talking
go-
to?
Jim Jeffries, and then the other Jim. I see the other Jim came in too a little later. Jim Jeffries, are you
didn't know
good
if you were
tonight?
talking to me.
Okay.
Jim Jeffries is good, Rick.
Okay,
Here's
Jim
my
Jeffries
thing
is
that
good.
my PSA is over 1,000. And I'm
Jim,
starting the Provicta. Is that how you say it? Pluvicta?
yeah, yeah.
And I don't know what to
Jim,
expect. So if
okay,
you can
Jim,
take a
we're
minute or
happy.
two and say,
Jim, we've got to leave you to the end because you weren't here in the first 10 minutes. I don't
okay,
believe.
okay.
And so we if you come in after the first 10 minutes, we'll come back to you.
I
If we've
thought
got
you were
time
asking
at the
me.
end.
I'm sorry. That's
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking to Jim Jeffries, but we will definitely come back to you if we've got time at the end, or we'll make time at the end, because there are people with Pluvicto experience here and we'd be happy to talk to you. Okay, I was just checking with Jim Jeffries because he was here, but we couldn't hear him. Tom Jacobsen, you have an update for us.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I just had a bone scan, full body bone scan, and a CT scan. So that just happened. I haven't seen my doc yet. Not a PSMA, just an MRI. But it came back, as I understand reading the thing, it came back with no change from the last one I had, which was last November. I've been on ADT for about a year and a half, diagnosed with a biopsy of 4+5, definitely metastatic, but mostly confined to the pelvic girdle. So I'm happy about that. But on the other hand, I've been having these ongoing aches and pains in my legs, like arthritis, and it's not getting better; it's getting worse. And I don't know if that's a function of ADT itself, or if that's the cancer, or if that's something unrelated. And wondering if other people in the crowd can relate to what I'm talking about. So that's the reason I'm talking this evening. And along with that, I'm curious about people who may have gone on an ADT vacation. As I said, I've been on this for a year and a half. I was diagnosed in 2021, about, I don't know, February, and had a PSA of 30.7, which Lupron and Dagerelix quickly knocked down to undetectable, which is where I've remained. But it's sort of a confusing thing. I know there have been studies that show intermittent ADT is not as good as just staying on ADT, but not everybody agrees with that. And especially when you're talking about quality of life, I just don't, I feel like I aged about 20 years since I started this thing. I had no symptoms at all, except what the doctors discovered. So it's a curious thing, and I don't really understand if it's the cancer itself or if it's my own side effect with ADT. And it's kind of a, don't know where to go from here. So I'm going to meet with the doc in another week and a half, and I get a PSA test every month, and so far they've been all the same. But I just wondered if anybody has any comments on this kind of scenario.
Are you still seeing your local oncologist, or have you upgraded at all to a GU medical oncologist?
I'm still seeing the same oncologist at Rocky Mountain Cancer Center in Longmont.
Okay, so I'll throw it open to anybody that wants to comment on muscular pains or leg pains from ADT or anything else that Tom has talked about. Who'd like to dive in first?
Well, this is Mark. I'm 6 months into a drug holiday from Lupron and Xtandi, and I'm doing great. I've got energy. My brain is cleared up a lot, and my PSA keeps coming back undetectable. And I had Gleason 9, so for now it's great.
Mark, how long did you stay on the LHRH and the other drug?
3 years.
I forget what else you. How
I
long?
was on 3 years. 3 years.
3 years. Okay, so that's a very, very important factor.
And how long are you planning on staying on this vacation, if you call it that?
We're waiting. If the PSA moves, then we'll decide what to do. If it doesn't move, I'm staying on it.
Tom, this is John. A lot of times at the beginning of treatment, the hospital has a tumor board meeting and they set out a treatment plan, and the treatment plan might say X number of months on ADT and then go off if the PSA permits it. Was there a plan at the beginning for you to stay on Lupron for a certain number of months? And then the other thing is that
I got off of Lupron. I went to Degarelix or Degarelix.
Well, either one. I mean, either one.
Any of these, okay. And I take enzalutamide as well.
Yeah.
But no, the plan was, and this is what makes me a little edgy. The plan is basically wait and see, and if the PSA goes up, then we do something different. I did go talk to. Go ahead.
Hopefully, Richard will give us a more authoritative opinion about that. But
sure.
So year and a half is a little on the. I don't know. It seems a little on the short side for a 4+5. Just from what I hear myself and from the other guys, you usually hear like a couple of years. And the other thing is that I've heard a number of people complain about leg pain when they were on ADT, and I think it's far more likely to do to that, or unless there's some independent problem, than it is to be the cancer itself. It's probably not the cancer itself, because you have an undetectable PSA, and I sure doubt that there's bone mets in your legs that are causing you pain.
Sorry. Go. Someone else wanted to talk.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
Go ahead, Richard. Let's go to Richard.
Yes.
Hold on, Jim Marshall. Hold on, Jim Marshall. Let's go to Richard Wassersug, and then we'll come to you.
Well, no, I'd like to hear Jim's comments first, so I can give an overview. Jim, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jim.
Concerning the leg pain, anyway, I get those too, and I found it is hydration. And so the thing I'll do is to drink about 16 ounces straight down, okay, and the leg pain goes away, okay, and it happens periodically, and I find that because I don't drink enough, I drink probably about 72 ounces a day. I am religious about it, spaced out, morning, noon, afternoon, and night. Of course, I get up to go to the bathroom a lot, but I don't hurt in the legs.
That's great advice. Thank you.
Okay, a couple of things. So I did a review on the issues of my bone pain and muscle pain as a general, in terms of when we talk about myalgia or arthralgia. And it turns out you do hear these often referred to as side effects of ADT. And I have there's on our website, lifeonadt.com. I do blog reviews of the new literature, and I raised the point that ADT, particularly if you're on ADT plus enzalutamide, the fatigue is enormous. And if you're not active, just sitting in a chair a long time, you can think of sitting in a train ride or a plane, can lead to bone and muscle sort of discomfort. So my first question would be, Thomas, what is your exercise regime and how active have you been? Because typically being active helps to beat off the general sort of aches and pains of getting old.
Yeah, that's a very for me that's a very humbling comment, because I used to be very active, and somewhere along the way I just kind of put it to bed, and I'm on my feet a lot because I take care of my wife 24/7. But I know, as far as regular exercise that I used to get, it's sitting there waiting for me, and I'm not doing it.
All right, so I'm not an expert on motivational interviewing or encouraging, but maybe with all these people on the screen, Rick's really a good motivator, and I know he's very much committed to exercise as well. Whether you're debating whether I should go off of ADT or stay on it, you're sort of looking at a version of a miracle drug. Maybe I get off it, there'll be a miracle, and I'll feel better. If you can do anything, assuming your doctors say you're healthy, to increase your activity level, and slow caring for someone walking around slowly loads the skeleton, and is not the same thing as I'm talking about getting your heart rate up.
Right.
And I would look into that before you make any decision about whether you stay on, get off the ADT. Give yourself a lifestyle change of that sort. And I will say this, it's not easy. If you haven't been active and you're on the combination of ADT plus enzalutamide, the fatigue can be enormous. And that can lead to depression. And depression can lead to inactivity. Inactivity can lead to muscle ache. And it becomes a vicious cycle.
So Tom, how old are you?
71, almost 72.
So have you eliminated arthritis?
No, that's my curiosity is, I never had anything like that per se, but that doesn't mean it's not, you know, after a while you don't know which is up, you know, is it arthritis, or is it a side effect, or is it the cancer, or all three, or none of these? I don't know. It's very confusing, but it's I'm not making it up. It's certainly very real, and it's come on stronger over, say, the last 2-3 months, a lot stronger.
It should be looked at.
Cramps at night? Do you get leg cramps at night?
Not so much anymore, Peter. I used to. That's a good question. I rarely get
Nothing
them.
makes you bound out of bed and stand up to get rid of a cramp. Not like that.
Not usually, but for a while I was getting that, and they were really awful cramps. I mean, all the way, you know, up through the groin. Really, like, terrible leg cramps. But that seems to have, well, so knock on wood, as so far slowed down, as have the hot flashes and some of that other stuff. But this apparent arthritis is really a concern.
So
have you been x-rayed for arthritis?
I don't know.
I mean, it's a simple x-ray. They can tell you right away if you've got it.
Okay. I mean, they picked up some stuff on the MRI, but the way they do reports on the MRI, it's kind of inconclusive, unfortunately.
They need a knee x-ray for arthritis. That's how they find it.
Okay.
Also, wherever your pain is, you get simple X-ray. Jeff is absolutely right. You don't need any fancy scans to tell if you have arthritis or not. Osteoarthritis would be revealed by simple X-ray. But the only thing I want to add is simply to what Richard said is that a lot of times, and Richard, I'm sure, can attest to this, guys are looking for an ADT vacation or to get off of it, to feel better, to feel the relief of the return of testosterone, which is understandable. However, if you are not moving and you're 71 years old, regardless of whether you're on ADT or not, this is something that you want to take seriously. And I'm not, there's nothing more for me to say about that. I know it's especially not easy on ADT, and the enzalutamide with the ADT is, of course, a bear. But this gets to be where if you stop moving, you're going to have consequences that will make you wish that you had done something. And that's as seriously as I can put it. You don't want that.
So I want to ask one quick question to Richard Wassersug, and then I think we need to move on. But Richard, is there any evidence that long-term ADT encourages arthritis?
No, not that I recall in any particular well-organized fashion. This I noticed I didn't call it arthritis. I called it arthalgia, pain and ache in the joints. I called it myalgia, pain and ache in the muscles. But again,
Okay.
in the most recent paper I reviewed on our website, I pointed out that we could not distinguish this from the collective despair, weight gain, loss of mobility, depression that can come from massive depression of testosterone associated with the double combination, particularly enzalutamide and ADT. So the lifestyle stuff is something to look into. Getting a proper diagnosis if you have osteoarthritis, that's pain specifically in the joints, that can be done. But you were talking about muscle pain. I will say one thing to Jim Marshall. For me, the amount of water you're drinking would interfere my sleep pattern sufficiently that it would be a loss of quality of life in a sort of serious way. So I don't think it's necessarily right or wrong, but it is something to discuss with your physician as to whether you should, if you are dehydrated or at any level at all, and whether you should increase your level of hydration. But again, these are things to discuss with your doctor. And about the exercise, it should be clear that you should be considered fit enough to exercise. I don't want you to go crushing your vertebra. So,
right. I mean, the other part of it, ADT is associated with sarcopenia.
Right, loss of muscle mass and
weight
gained as fat.
And that and inactivity plus ADT and sarcopenia can make things a lot worse.
Yeah, leads to fatigue. It makes it more difficult to get off the couch. Not getting off the couch makes it more depressing.
Right.
Getting me depressed. It's a vicious cycle. So it's good to see you smiling, Thomas. But I think we all should cheer you on. Get going tomorrow. Get us do something that gets you a sweat.
You will be so glad if I always say guys that are at the bottom.
Let me cut in because we've really got to move on. I think that the message is clear. You got to exercise. Really important. If it were me, I would not go off ADT right now. I'm not saying a holiday isn't right, but we've just seen too many guys get off the ADT too early, and it's risky. If you can sit it through to, closer to 24, 28 months, which is what a lot of the evidence has suggested in the past, you're going to be happier. 18 months is good, but the longer you can endure it, the better. And the best way to endure it longer is to exercise. So, Tom, just keep coming back and we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you again.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, you guys.
Dennis Correa. Tell us
I'm
what the update is.
Well, I did my 90-day blood work and my Lupron injection, and keeping up with the Abby and the prednisone, and everything's working well. I'm still non-detect on the PSA and non-detect on testosterone. And just to, that's 6.5 years on this routine. And I did take partway through about a couple years, a year and a half or so ago, I did do the break. I took the holiday from everything, Lupron, Abby, prednisone, and I got about 8 months before it started creeping up again. And then went out for the PSMA scan and found out I had some issues going on. So went back on it, and also got some radiation to the prostate and to one of the primary mets at the base of my spine. And that brought it right back pretty quick. And you know, the activity, I try to stay active, play golf, 18 holes twice a week. When I'm not playing golf, I like to go out for walks. And then I've got a set of weights I use at home to do the weight loading and get a little aerobic stuff going. Try to eat right. Salmon and chicken primary.
You missed something out with your exercise, Dennis. Where's my buddy David Muslin? Well, I can't see it. I can't see him. I know he's in here somewhere. Oh, he's got his camera off. He must be eating. You how many times a week do you polish that Porsche 917T or whatever it is? What is it? What's your Porsche?
718 Cayman S.
Right.
I do. I'm getting, matter of fact, getting ready.
You polish it.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I do the wax job about 4 times a year, but I'm getting ready now for a Concord Delegates Porsche Club meeting up in Phoenix. So I'll be probably a couple hundred cars up there.
This guy's my hero.
Yeah, that's my golf and my car keeps me busy with stuff to do. Yeah, I do. When I do all my polish and wax, it's all by hand. I don't use any machines. So
that's right. This car, you could eat your dinner off of the hood of this car. I just want to tell you.
Yeah, one last comment too, if I could, on the sore muscles or the leg aches that Tom was talking about. I have that problem generally after exercising and then a long drive or something. Or even at night, in the middle of the night, or after golf, I'll get cramping, leg cramping. And the thing that works the best for me is Theraworx. It's a product that comes in a pump bottle with a foam type stuff, and you just rub that. It's magnesium, and it works really well. You can do it to prevent the cramping, or if you wake up in the middle of the night with the cramps, you put it on. You know, like Peter says, get up and try to stand up and stretch that muscle a little bit if you can. But put this stuff on, and it's gone in probably a minute or two.
I agree. It works pretty good. I've been using it for several years since you recommended it.
Yeah.
Okay, and we should also add that car of his wins awards at these concourses. It doesn't just drive there and get looked at. It takes ribbons home as well. Okay, Bob, Dr. Bob, you had some update for us, right?
Yeah, kind of. So last week so I'm pretty new to this. I was de novo, high volume metastatic. Just end of April, I was diagnosed. So I'm in between chemo number 3 and 4 on ADT. My doctor wanted me to have, and I had a draw last week for a liquid biopsy. So I think she's ready soon to pivot to immunotherapy because I've got my genomics came back with MMR deficient and microsatellite instability high and a high tumor mutation burden. So I'm kind of like one of the 5% that Keytruda is kind of designed for. And my question is anyone familiar? I read about a test called ImmuDX that's supposed to help predict the risk of immune-related adverse effects. Anyone familiar with that or use that?
Yes,
Peter.
I took it several years ago, and that's it showed that I was very tolerant for Keytruda, and that's what I'm taking right now is Keytruda. So it's a simple mouth swab.
Oh, mouth swab. That's even easier.
Yeah, it's very simple. I think it was developed by a scientist in LA. I can't remember her name.
Yeah, from UCLA. Yeah, so I'm just waiting on the liquid biopsy, which I'm assuming she's looking to make sure that there's enough DNA, floating in the blood to, maybe switch over from chemo, because I've been starting to get some pretty good peripheral neuropathies after just 3, and so.
So Bob, I have a question. For you. This MSI-H, did that come back from a liquid test or from a solid tumor test?
That was from genomics on the biopsy.
Right. And so she's now wanting to probably do the liquid test so she can find out your tumor burden, because you can't tell the tumor burden from the solid tumor test.
Right. It showed the percentage of mutations, which was like 23%, but that's why I'm figuring that she wants to see the tumor burden and see where I am after 3 chemos.
Right. And what, but you had, as I recall, you had no mutation showed up, right?
No, there were mutations, just, there's a whole bunch, but nothing that specifically are actionable other than the MSI.
Okay. MSI-H.
Yeah, and the MMR deficient.
Right. Any questions you have for Peter about Keytruda, pembrolizumab, or whatever it is she chooses for you?
I think I saw from the last meeting, which I wasn't there, that Peter, your liver enzymes went sky high and you had to go on a high dose of prednisone. Is that correct?
Right. And I've been weaning off of it this week, and I'm going to re-challenge the Keytruda next Monday, if all things look good.
Okay.
They got to closely monitor you. You want to make sure they do blood tests. I'm sure they will, just before, every time you go in, before they infuse you, just to make sure you're good to go. Because these drugs, can mess up your system somewhat. It's a balancing act. They're going to watch things carefully. It's not only your liver enzymes, but other things. It's kind of crazy making. I feel great, but invisibly, there's all kinds of weird things going on.
No, I understand that. Abiraterone, 1 week on that, shot my bilirubin sky high.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Well, hopefully she'll get you onto this sooner rather than later, but hang in as much as you can with the docetaxel, because it does work, and I know that once you get into that 5th and 6th round, it starts to really take a toll, but hang in.
Yeah, the chemo itself really hasn't been too bad. It's just the neuropathy.
Yeah. Did you start the B6?
Yeah, 3 times a day, but I'm finding the neuropathy is getting gradually worse.
Yeah, worse. Yeah.
Does that take a long time to clear up after the chemo stops?
It can do. Some people have it forever. after chemo.
I still have it 2 years later. It hasn't gone away yet. In fact, it's more intense than ever.
It went away for me, but it took a while.
Yeah. I mean, I got it from the ADT, and it's never gone away. And something that was really interesting was that when I stopped taking the B6 before my surgery, because they had told me to stop it, the damn, after about 2 weeks, the damn neuropathy came back, and I started getting neuropathy in my heels again. And then as soon as I started the B6, it's cleared up. So I do think the B6 works. Now, it works for me because it wasn't as bad and the damage wasn't as bad from the ADT as it is from chemo. But I have Peter Kafka to thank for getting me onto the B6. So, all right, we're going to keep rolling. Richard Cramon, did you want some time? I'm not sure. I forget.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
I had the chemo and the ADT at the same time. Since I'm new to this game, I got diagnosed in February. And by the way, they put me on I've had neuropathy before this for like 20 years, and it got worse. And now that I've gone off of chemo in July, it has not gotten any better. Anyway, at the end of July, I finished the 6 rounds of Doxil, and I'm continuing on the ADT. My 3 months is up in another week. So I've had 8 weeks of just ADT, and then I've had a CT scan late last week, and the number of nodules in my lungs, which is probably the biggest concern, didn't go down, but they did shrink. The ones they use as indexes shrank a little. My PSA when I started this in February 22nd was 2.05. In July, middle of July, it was 0.166, and now it is 0.153, and testosterone went down from 426, it's now 18. But nobody really believes the PSA numbers, since I've never had the elevated. But the CT scan came back with the lymph nodes. One remained the same, the other one shrunk, or other side shrank, and we'll see where we go from there. I've gone to back to Johns Hopkins to Dr. Makowski, and he's given me a couple of options depending on how the tests come out. But if we keep going down in size, and on ADT, he's said, just do that and add the what is it? No?
Abiraterone.
Thank you. I could never be in medical. I can't pronounce.
Just call it Abby. If you call it Abby, we'll know.
Yeah, and he said that versus going back and doing another 6 rounds of chemo. I flew through chemo. They gave me enough stuff that my biggest problem was Benadryl injections into the bags. As soon as they did that, I went to sleep. So I slept through a good part of it, and afterwards didn't have much trouble. So, but it wasn't fun. But next week we'll see with Dr. Allen, who's the as you call quarterback GU oncologist, and he's got Dr. Markowski again.
Right.
Consulting with. So that's where
what we should point out for everybody is that who doesn't know is that Richard has a very rare type of prostate cancer, high-grade foamy gland prostatic adenosarcoma, which I certainly never heard before. So, you know, it may not respond in the same way as other types of prostate cancer. Have they, it sounds to me that the bottom line is that they want to keep you on the ADT and they want to add Abby. Is that right, Richard?
Yeah, I think that's what Dr. Allen's going to, I see him this week as well. So I think that's what the answer is going to be. And he's using the ANOVA tumor board.
Right. But I think Dr. Markowski is probably, you know, the most educated of your docs.
Yeah. We all agree.
And he's the one that suggested the abiraterone, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any comments or would like to say anything to Richard?
Yeah, Rick. Richard, I would ask your doctor to put you on darolutamide instead of abiraterone. Most guys find that darolutamide has almost no cognitive deficit effect, whereas abiraterone does, and as does enzalutamide and apalutamide. So I think you might find it easier to be on the darolutamide, and it was approved just recently in August, actually, of this year. Darolutamide plus docetaxel plus ADT extended life by, well, reduced the risk of death by 32%. Yeah. Versus ADT plus docetaxel alone. So yeah, try that.
Yeah, we'll see. The Dr. Epstein up at Johns Hopkins, they had to go to get Johns Hopkins to get a pathologist who had ever seen it. No, ANOVA did not. But his experience, he had 21 cases and 7 survived a short period. I don't know what so it is aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, Len, I think the question really is whether the way that abiraterone works versus an androgen blocker would be a consideration for this particular type of prostate cancer. I mean, I think that's the question. If an androgen blocker like darolutamide or enzalutamide or apalutamide would work, then yeah, darolutamide is going to be a more comfortable option for you than abiraterone, but I don't know whether it works or not.
So I could ask that there's no data on that since foamy cell is so rare.
Yeah.
So my only question is, Richard, so have they considered that the docetaxel was successful?
It was. If you look at there's very small differences, but we're playing with. But with the docetaxel and ADT combined, which was what really, and prednisone was what Johns Hopkins
Right.
said, okay, it's aggressive enough. Let's just hit it with everything. And it did better than the ADT alone. But ADT alone, uh, they're kind of playing it. If it works, continues to work, it may not be working as fast, but and there's no new metastasis, then that it's probably better to stick with that until it quits working.
That meaning
it'll quit, and then most likely it will quit working, and we'll go back to docetaxel.
Well, that's what I was I keep thinking of Ken Anderson, who had many, many doses of docetaxel that kept his stuff in check. And if it's a rare cancer that we don't know if it's going to respond to second generation anti-androgens, because probably there's not a lot of data, what about more docetaxel?
Yeah, that is one of the options, particularly if ADT did not work. Then during this period, then that would be the option that Markowski suggested.
And what about sequencing?
Did Dr. Apollo did Dr. Apollo suggest anything for you when you met with her at the MSI-H?
No.
He did not.
No.
What?
And I've had both genetic testing of the tumor and of the general genetic testing, and they both came out negative.
Right. So actually, Richard, what I'm thinking is, in a rare, what genetic testing is, they're looking for mutations. They're picking particular spots and the particular genes. They're looking particular mutations which are associated with cancer. I wonder if you couldn't convince somebody to just sequence the tumor, not just looking for mutations, because it may come up with something unique.
Well, isn't sequencing the tumor what he did with us when they did somatic testing?
No.
Huh?
When they do somatic testing, Rick, they're looking at particular things like P53, CHEK2, BRCAs for mutations in those regions of the gene.
I don't have what it is, but it was something like 65. They tried matching it to 65 or 85 particular genes.
No, it should be 300. I mean, it should at least be 313, but they're looking for 313. But the difference, what Herb is saying, is they should just sequence your tumor. And it's worth talking to Markowski about sequencing the tumor completely, doing a complete sequence of the tumor just to see what's there.
Rick, are you talking about the most, oh, sorry, Herb, no, Rick, but if you're talking about sequencing the tumor, the one of concern are the pulmonary tumors. How are you going to get a biopsy from the lungs? That it can be done, but it's not easy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we've got to be able to get a sample from somewhere. I mean, they can biopsy those lung nodules. We've known people do that.
But we have the original biopsies from that were used for pathology.
Yeah.
And that was over a year ago.
No, that was like January.
Okay, 9 months ago. So yeah, pretty recent. It is pretty recent. I mean, I think it's a good suggestion from Herb to talk to Markowski about sequencing the tumor. And we'll definitely get to you, Jeff. Don't worry. We don't close up at the witching hour.
Just to butt in a second, I had a needle biopsy on my nodules in the lungs at the OSU James Cancer Hospital, and it was successful, and it did confirm that it was metastatic prostate cancer.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely possible. So you might be able to get him to take a new sample from the lungs and to get them to do a full sequencing on that, Richard. Especially given the rarity of the disease.
Right. And the
And
other
it might
place
be something that NIH might be willing to do.
I was going to say, come back. See if you come back to NIH and ask them to do it, because they've got a new sequencing protocol that I just signed on to.
So
Okay.
to go
Yeah,
back to Dr. Apollo, how would he go about doing that, Herb? Go back to Dr. Apollo?
Right. And say, go back to Apollo and say, hey, any protocols we can sequence this tumor? And NIH, of course, can do it. It's easily and for zero money.
I know there is a study, and I don't have their name now, but it's at MIT, Harvard, that is very interested in. They are asking for one of the samples.
So that's the metastatic prostate cancer project, MPCP, that's run by Ellie Van Allen. And I didn't want to muddy the waters by asking you about that, but I'm sure that Ellie is very, very interested in it. But here's the problem, Richard. They don't participate their results.
Yes.
And I think that if you were to get this, the way to work with MPCP is to get this done by the NIH and then to have the NIH share that with MPCP. Because one of the big problems with MPCP is that, first of all, they've had difficulty getting records from their participants. And, you could go in at the beginning and I can work with you and I can work with Ellie and we can try and get it sorted. But I think the first step is to see if you can do what Herb suggests and get Dr. Apollo to sequence.
Okay. That makes sense. We'll try to get that done. Because otherwise, NIH has kind of said, well, it's too rare for them to really.
Right. That may be the problem as well. And even in terms of sequencing, they may just say we can't, it's a one-off thing and we won't know what to do with the data.
Yeah.
Or to go back to Ellie and cut a deal with him and say, Ellie, I'm happy to work with you, but you've got to give me the results.
Okay.
And so start with Dr. Apollo and then come back and tell me, and I'm happy to write to Ellie. He's a wonderful guy. He really is. And we know him very well. He's on our advisory board, and say, we'd love to get this guy sequenced, but he needs the results, Ellie.
Okay. So I'll try Apollo first and I'll get back with you.
And also, keep Markowski in the loop and tell Markowski what you want to do. And in the meantime, let's see if you respond to the Abbey.
Yeah. Because that'll start this week, I believe.
Okay. So we're past the witching hour. We still got two gents that we need to talk to. First one is Jeff. And Jeff has put some information in the chat window. And Jeff, I know I've got notes. I know I've got notes on you, but I'm having trouble finding them.
Ask me a question, and hopefully can I answer it.
Well, I need your last name.
Oh, DURYEE. Delta Uniform Romeo
That's right.
Yankee.
Right. That's
Echo,
right.
Echo.
That's right. That's right. Got it. Got it. Got it. That's right. Okay. So let's talk about this trial that you're looking at.
Well, it's a trial that I'm in.
Okay.
Under Peter G. Veldhuizen, MD. And so far, I consider it basically docetaxel, but they have these 3 other things that they're putting into my system in different orders when I do have my infusions. And the docetaxel has given me some minor problems of diarrhea, but I've worked that out. And it's a mess, but hey, those are things that you live with and you work it out and you do things and make it better. And they added 3 months to my trial, which will be starting next month because this is my 10th cycle. And so I believe that it must be doing something well. Otherwise, they would have stopped it.
So the last information that I have on you, Jeff, was that your PSA was, this is from over a year ago, but I know we've spoken since, that your PSA was down around 0.55 before the trial. What was your PSA when you started the trial?
Oh, let me take a look. My PSA was possibly a 3.66.
Okay.
And then I had an orchiectomy, and then the trial started after my orchiectomy. And it's been rising slowly because I figured my adrenaline or adrenal glands produce some of the PSA or testosterone or whatever it is. And I'm hoping that I can talk to the doctors and see if I can get a PSMA scan, but I'm in Rochester, New York, so I don't know where they have that, and I don't think I can travel to California to get it done.
Well, we just heard somebody that Dr. Van V is ordering a PSMA PET scan for someone.
I will talk to my my people tomorrow because I am going in for an appointment tomorrow. First thing, I have to go in and get my blood work. Then I have a follow-up appointment, and then I have my wonderful infusion. So it takes me all day.
Well, Tony Fig, who's still with us, is seeing Dr. Van V, and they're going to order a PSMA scan for him. So, you know, what is your current PSA level?
My current PSA level as of last month was 7.00. The month before was 6.97. It's creeping up slowly.
Okay.
So what's the point at which they say it's not working?
They haven't said it's not working. I think they think it's working because they added 3 more months of treatment on me. So those are questions I need to ask my physician's assistant or doctor or whoever I see tomorrow. And they do take every 3 months, they do, there's testing. They do a full body scan, and then they do, they take 3 different pictures. I call them pictures. But, that I will be doing 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't know much about this trial. I don't know if the other guys do this with ZIMBERELIMAB and ETRUMADENT. I think I've read about ETRUMADENT before, but I don't know the concept of the trial.
Yeah.
You said that your PSA was 3.66 when you started, but it then went all the way up to 9, and now it's back down to 7. Is that right?
I just slid the information on my window of my my iPhone, because that's where I can talk and I can have the information right on my iPhone. Okay. Let's see. It was at 3.66, and I believe that was approximately when I got my orchiectomy. And because
when did it go to 9?
It's gone to, well, oh, I don't have back to that history, but it's 7.06, the highest it's gone now, or 6.97, which is a 7.
Okay, so so even with these drugs, it's creeping up. Is that what you're saying to me?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know if you're getting all 3 of the drugs?
Yes, I am, because I watch them and I read the labels on the little bags.
Yeah, it's open label. It's an open label phase 1/2.
Yep.
Okay, well, I can't really comment much more other than hang in. I mean,
hey,
Herb, do you want to say anything else on the trial?
Well, I'm reading clinicaltrials.gov about, it's a combination of the adenosine receptor antagonist, PD-1, and docetaxel.
Right.
So they say that their criteria are judged they don't have any hard and fast criteria for judging success. And I worry that they don't have any hard and fast criteria for judging failure.
Right. I don't know. And that's, I'm a little bit in the dark, but I have to trust my doctors. And
well, I mean, you trust your doctor, Jeff, but I would ask Dr. Van Vee, what is the measure of success for me? And what would you consider failure for me?
All right. Well, I'll have to set up an appointment or talk to him on my portal. I'll be able to hopefully get an answer that way, because I have not met Dr. Ben Belgiusen.
You haven't?
No, because everything's been taken care of, and this is a study that he's conducting, but it's all by his lower people who are conducting the study.
And you're getting it, and you're at Strong. You're going to get your treatments at Strong.
Yes. University of Rochester, Strong Memorial, yes, that group.
Richard.
Herb, if you have the clinicaltrials.gov website open on the trial, what is the primary trial outcome? Radioactive progression?
Trial outcome is overall response rate is defined as the composite proportion of patients with a PSA and or radiographic CR and PR determined by the investigator according to the Prostate Cancer Working Group 3 criteria.
I'm sorry.
Jeff, you can see Herb and I are both smiling at that. I mean, that's sufficiently vague that you have.
Right. I mean, what the hell?
That must have been written by a lawyer.
Well, no, it's written because they want to get a result.
Yes.
But I think, Jeff, given the situation, I would want to know how, and do they have a patient portal that you can write questions in?
Yes, they do.
So I would write the question. I'm in this trial. Could you please define for me what would be success and what would be not success?
Yes, I will.
For me, not for the trial.
Right. For me, yes.
For the trial,
for
they'll
me,
look at a bunch of patients, but I want to know how they would judge your progress.
right. My progress for me, Jefferson.
Right.
And, I took the trial because I looked at it. I said, hey, they're going to do a lot more testing, a lot more checking of what's happening with my system. And if nothing else, hopefully it will give information to other people down the road. That's the main reason why. Because I know everybody's going to die, and that's okay. Once I got to that point of my 7th stage of grief, when I got acceptance, that's when I was able to start thinking healthily.
Okay, we've got one more gent to get to, and it's 7:15, so we've got to move on. But I think this is really great advice that these guys are giving you, Jeff. That you've got to get some definitions of failure and success for Jefferson.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, and the last gent on the list today, because Marty Perrotta dropped off, is Alan in New Jersey. Alan, are you with us? I see. Are you still there? Sorry to get to you so late.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, great.
We can. Now, let me ask you, have you been with us before? Because I don't see any notes on you.
I was with you last week.
You were with me last.
I think you were not. You were not here last week.
Ah, that's why I don't have any notes on you. Okay, all right. Well, I'll have to get. I'll get
Len
some.
did the moderation last week.
Right. It was 2 weeks ago. We didn't have a meeting last week.
Okay. All right.
I'll make some notes. I'll go back and listen and make some notes on you. So please go ahead.
Okay, an update, and I have 3 questions for what's left of the group. I had a MRI follow-up for Pylarify PSMA test 5 weeks ago that showed 3 hotspots in the prostate and in the bilateral iliac regions. The prostate was a 20 SUV, the iliac regions was 2. However, to my surprise, the MRI came up negative. There were no suspicious prostate lesions seen, no evidence of adenopathy, PIRADS category 2. So the first question is, has anyone in the group experienced something similar where MRI did not pick up 20 SUV hotspot from the PET scan?
Anybody had, so in other words, we've got a negative MRI and a positive PSMA. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. The SUV and the prostate was 20, which was worrisome. The others were 2, which is not worrisome. But the MRI did not see any of the 3 hotspots.
Not surprising. The PSMA is much more detailed.
Correct. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Peter beat me to it. Peter, wasn't Alan in your group originally and we moved him up? Am I right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So the answer to your first question is Alan, is not unusual.
Not unusual?
No, because the PSMA is a much more detailed scan, and it's gonna pick up things the MRI won't see.
Okay. The purpose of the MRI is to define the border so they could do a biopsy, targeted biopsy. So
Yeah, but it
what
doesn't show it's not going to give the detailed results that the PSMA scan will give.
So how do I proceed from here? I presume some type of biopsy, and that relates to my second question. There is a 29 millihertz micro biopsy being done at Fox Chase. Anyone in the group have any experience with that? And how good it is compared to the PSMA and MRI?
So is that we need Joe Gallo here? I mean, is this is that the micro ultrasound that you're talking about?
Correct. And it appears Fox Chase offers it. I have an appointment with one of the doctors there 2 or 3 weeks from now. But in the meantime, wanted to get some feedback.
I mean, I'm trying to piece this all together since I only came in at the end last week. I'm trying to remember, and I don't have notes in front of you. Peter, can you remind? Isn't this an issue where we think that there should be there's a possible metastasis, and we're trying to figure out before we start treatment where the metastasis is? Isn't that the situation?
Well, I had a I had a Gleason 9 in one of the cores of the prostate, and I was treated with radiation and Firmagon, and that was back in 2018. I hit nadir of non-detectable in November 2018. From then, the PSA has been rising steadily. So at the time it got to 0.95, I had the Pylarify, and the PSA doubling time was 7.5 months at that point. So the latest MRI, 5 weeks later, the PSA dipped a little bit to 0.87. And that relates to my third question.
Why are we messing around with the MRI? What we need right now is a PSMA scan, which is what you've got.
Right. Well, my
so this is overkill.
Well, my MO said in order to define the border so we can do a targeted biopsy, we would need a 3T MRI.
What do we need a biopsy for? What do we need a biopsy for? Who's your MO?
Lerner, Dr. Lerner, local guy.
Okay. Didn't we tell you to go and see Gainesman?
Yes, and that appointment I think.
Okay, so do us a favor, go see Gainesman. It doesn't matter what the border is. If you've got metastasis, now we've got to treat you. We've got to figure out how much metastasis, where it is, and that will define the next level of treatment. We're not looking for borders. And you know, these docs, these MOs that are general practitioners, they don't know their stuff, and they're futzing around. And the reason why I think we said to you, go see Gainesman, go get a PSMA scan, and you know, you can get yourself so tied up in the detail of the megahertz and the this and that. No, what you need, Alan, is you need to know where you've got prostate cancer. So remind us again, what did the PSMA scan say to you?
It was a hot spot in the apical region of the prostate, SUV20.
Okay.
In the bilateral, right, in the bilateral regions, SUV of 2.
How many hot spots?
Total of 3.
Okay, so now you're gonna meet with Dan Gainesman or a similar qualified GU med-onc, and you're going to talk about what's the right treatment. Are we going to do spot radiation on this? Are we going to start hormone therapy and with abiraterone? I mean, that would be the way to go. We can fuss around with.
Are we jumping the gun?
Well, if you've got a hot spot, man, and it shows up as PSMA, why are you jumping the gun?
Because
you want to let it grow?
No, apparently there's a discussion that this may be a false positive, residual inflammation from the radiation, from what one comment I got.
But if it's residual inflammation from the radiation, why would it be making PSMA?
I don't know.
If it's
I don't
dead
know enough
tissue that's
about the.
inflamed, if it's dead tissue that's inflamed, who is it that's telling you that?
It's
Dr. Lerner?
one of the Health Unlocked, and also
Okay, so
Paul Allen told me also to get a biopsy.
well, you do what you wish. If it were me, I'd be going to see Dan Gainesman with the result of the PSMA and saying, what do we do next?
Is there something called a PSMA fusion biopsy? I think that was also
Not that
mentioned.
I've ever heard of.
Really? Okay.
Did somebody suggest to you on Health Locked Out that
That was on Inspire.
there's a fusion biopsy?
Yeah, somebody on Inspire.
Somebody on Inspire told you there's a fusion biopsy with a PSMA?
They said to do something of, if I recall, somebody by the name of Rick, and he said you can find a doctor who can do a PSMA fusion biopsy.
Well, I've not heard of any fusion biopsy PSMAs to date. Have you, Peter Kafka? We know they do them with MRIs, but I haven't heard them overlaying any PSMA scans on the biopsies. Peter, have you heard of that? No.
No.
So, there's a lot of experts. There's a lot of experts on Health Locked Out and on Inspire, and you can get yourself so confused you don't know where you're coming or going. And it sounds to me that's where you're at, Alan.
Okay.
And if it were me, what I would do right now is the first thing is I get myself a Geneva urinary medical oncologist. Do you have one?
No, like I said, I have a local doctor, and I do have an appointment.
Okay, so you need, because when we talked to you last time, we said get a Geneva urinary medical oncologist on board.
When is your appointment with Gainesman? When's your appointment?
They're the experts, and we told you that.
The earliest they can give me was I think the third week of September, 24th, 25th.
Okay, so that's 2 weeks away.
Good. Keep it.
So, you take that appointment, you take your PSMA scan, and you ask him, what should we do next? He's probably going to refer you to one of the good ROs. There's a lady there with a Chinese name. I forget her name, but she's good, and some of our guys like her. And you're going to go see her. And all of these experts that are telling you what to do on Health Locked Out and Inspire, I wouldn't be listening to them. You've done what you needed to do. You've got your PSMA scan and it identified 2 lesions.
Well, 3 lesions altogether.
3 lesions. You mentioned 2 hotspots. There are 3 hotspots?
Well, the bilateral iliac regions, but there was no adenopathy, no evidence of adenopathy from the MRI.
So why do you keep going back to the MRI, man? If you've got PSMA being expressed that's picked up by, what was it, a gallium, or was it a
Pylarify.
18F?
Pylarify.
Huh?
Pylarify.
Okay, so if you've got the Pylarify picking it up, then yes, and now I understand. If it's a Pylarify, yes, we do know that there's a possibility of false positives with the Pylarify, but they've done a lot to correct that with the artificial intelligence by adjusting the artificial intelligence. So if you're really concerned, don't go through a biopsy. Get another PSMA test. Get a gallium test, and compare the gallium test to the Pylarify test, because the gallium test is less likely to show you a false positive.
Yes, that was one of the comments also, get another PSMA test to confirm.
So I go back to Rick, what you're saying, and before you get any more tests, let's see what Gainesman has to say. Your medical oncologist right now is not qualified really to do what he's doing. This is above his pay grade. You need a
appears.
GU oncologist.
Okay. Last question I have is, does anybody have any knowledge where statins would depress the PSA?
Nothing. There's no data.
Okay. I was curious because this time I forgot to stop the Crestor I was taking, and the PSA dipped, which is the first time it was dipped in a long, long time. So there's no evidence that the Crestor caused the dip?
No.
No. Okay.
So it's a controversial subject. There are a lot of people that feel that being on a statin regime whilst you're with prostate cancer can be helpful because the statins to some extent can inhibit the production of testosterone in a very complicated way. But I've never heard anybody actually see a response in their PSA one way or the other from adding or subtracting statins. That said, you know, the metformin, statin, aspirin triple combination is supposed to be a good way to help you maintain a durable remission or to get a durable remission.
Well, I'm on all three, not because of that, because I'm diabetic, also cardio issues.
There you go. But you know,
Alan, do we have your email? Do we email?
I don't know how to give that to you. How do you give the email?
Can you put it in the chat?
I have it. Are you at btgplc.com?
No.
Oh, that's not you?
No, that's not me.
Okay.
Can you put it in the
Then
chat? I'll tell you what.
How do you use the chat? I'm not sure how do you do that.
My email is peterk@AnCan.
Okay, I found the chat. I found the chat. Okay, let me
put it in there, and I'll keep in touch with you. You want to put together a very short, comprehensive list of questions for Dr. Gainesman. You want to go in there prepared with some very specific questions, and I'll try to give you a hand with that over the next week or so.
Well, yeah, I do have a lot of questions for him, so.
Well, don't have a lot. You want to have about half a dozen really specific ones that he can help you with. I'll try to feed you some ideas.
Okay, sounds good. Did the email come through?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
It's in the chat, and you know, if you want to send it privately your last name so we can put you on the database, that would be a good thing too.
Okay. No, nothing to hide. So.
And I'll try and get some records, or Peter, you'll get some records, but we got to get you to Gainesman. We got to get you to somebody who knows. And you know, I'm worried that you got too many cooks here, and they're confusing you. And you know, I do see why they might consider this was a false positive, but I think you've got to let somebody like Gainesman and the radiation oncologists make that decision, and not Alan Edel or anybody else. I mean, because to put somebody through a biopsy on the basis of being concerned about false positives, I think there are other things that we might be able to do. And I also think the technology is improved in the way that the Pylarify scans are being read.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Peter, I'll put this in the database. If you can just send me your notes, that would be helpful. Peter Kafka.
Do you want my history, or what is exactly you looking for?
Peter will work with you to get it. If you and Peter work together, and I'll take I'll glean whatever I can off of last week's recording. I thought I took it down, but evidently I didn't. So.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, guys, and you'll get a reminder for this meeting going forward. All right. Sorry we went on so long. We're going to stop the recording. Everybody's going to go home. I'm going to get a drink. That's what I need.
I'm going to go to sleep.
Gary Peters, how are you?
I'm
Smiley?
doing okay. I just got cleared with my back. So,
Oh, good.
Oh, great, Gary.
okay to start doing normal activities.
Good.
Fantastic.
So you can join our gym.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We'll get Jimmy, Gary, and Herb in there all at the same time. Oh my gosh, we could have a meeting.
And how's your hip doing?
Well, I saw an orthopod and he thinks I have arthritis, but we're going to do conservative treatment of NSAIDs and physical therapy before hip replacement.
And Rick, how's your hip doing?
That's what I thought you were asking, but I wasn't quick enough off the mark to get in before Herb. It's doing, it's interesting. I'm going to stop the recording.